Chapter 27. The walk-come-jog back to camp was forgettable, literally, because Emily forgot most of it. It felt like it took lifetimes. She did remember that. And she was sweating from the heat, yet shivering as she was ridiculed by howler monkeys, gossiped about by birds, and mocked by the jungle itself. It was a battle, a sojourn, an unwillingness to simply sit down and dissolve into the living stomach of the ecosystem. Sasha unclipped the cord once she spotted the domes and nervously stuffed it in her pocket. Turning to Emily, she grabbed her shoulders, the look of gold fever all over Sasha's face. She held no bluffs now. She was laid bare by the same herbal gumbo as Emily, her irises swallowed up by her pupils. Just get some sleep, if you can, and in your supplies, take one of the detox packets. Emily's uncontrollable laughter cut through the rainforest ruckus, sending a troop of nearby monkeys off through the trees, screeching. If you really think I'm gonna eat any more of your voodoo bullshit gumdrops, you're out of your fucking mind, she hissed at a paranoid Sasha. Shush, seriously, Em, keep it down. Look, just go directly to your tent and sleep it off, for both our sakes, all right? Emily slapped Sasha's hands away and shuffled past her. Mumbling to a bewildered Coraline and Harold as she passed, she practically fell into her tent. A few seconds later, Emily miraculously managed to zip it shut. She let out a torrent of curse words and then went silent. Thank all the gods, Sasha thought as she tried to hold on to as much of her own consensus reality as she could. The course of the 9 they had taken was very concentrated and way too potent if today's drama was any gauge. She would have to throw away or remelt the whole batch and cut them with something. But what was done was done. As Sasha tried to casually stroll past the other two, Coraline piped up, her eyes narrowed with suspicion. Is Emily okay? She looked kind of tired, she asked, scrutinizing her boss's face for clues. Yeah, no, she, Do not freak out. You are high as fuck, but they don't know that. They can't read your mind. Remember. Okay, honesty time, Sasha said, slapping her palms on her legs like a little kid. We got sort of lost. After running out of trail food, and poor Emily, she panicked big time. I think it triggered some PTSD when she was a kid at camp. I guess she was left behind or something. But hey, I don't want to pry, you know. So, if you two could do me a solid and not bring it up, I'd appreciate it. She is really embarrassed, so... Sasha's little tale was detailed enough to satisfy casual busybodies, and sufficiently awkward to dissuade further prying. But she also knew that Coraline was clever and wouldn't hesitate to pack up and leave if she felt messed with. And right now, in the clutch, Sasha needed Coraline's brilliant tech support more than ever. You couldn't count on anything going to plan in the jungle under ideal conditions, let alone in the reality-bending, entheogen-fueled rumspringa that Sasha had orchestrated. Ack! Was Harold's succinct contribution to the discussion as he sipped on a juice pouch. Her brow relaxing, Coraline figured it was true enough and dropped it. Indeed, Sasha began, satisfied she had dodged another bullet. Well, I'm tired, sweaty, and dirty as a damn coal miner, so unless you need me, Sasha asked, indicating impatience and the desire to get cleaned up. Oh, yeah, no. Go recoup. We're good, Coraline said with a pang of guilt for stopping her. There's some fresh noodles in the mess hall, probably still hot, and spring rolls too, Harold added with his usual nurturing charm. Sasha gave them a grateful, exhausted nod of recognition and headed off to her tent and a hot date with some wet wipes. Coraline looked inquisitively at Harold, prompting a shrug and a mischievous smile. He glanced over to his tent and made the walking signal with 2 fingers. Then, like a big, lovable idiot, the vigorous finger in an orifice gesture. She grinned, remembering the riverbank fondly. But something extraordinary was going on in this camp, and out there in the shadowy jungle. And the guilt she had felt a moment ago seemed weak and misplaced as her mind pressed for a better explanation. Sexy time with Harold was great, but it could wait a bit. You go ahead, cuteness. Give me half an hour? Oh, and find some wine. Another smile, and he was off. Silent and pent up, just the way I like 'em, Coraline thought, heading out to satisfy the nagging doubt still lingering in her overactive mind. Coraline sailed past Sasha's tent and heard the distinct creaking of the aluminum cot. Hopefully, she would be passed out soon, giving Coraline enough time for some general snooping. She figured that whatever Sasha was concealing would probably be close, hidden in plain sight from all the people Sasha considered dullards or dunces, because that's how Coraline would have done it. So she headed for the main tent, the most likely candidate. It was blessedly empty, allowing her to immediately start searching. There was nothing overtly suspect in the kitchen or support rooms, just servers, radios, labs, and medical supplies. As she paced at the back of the big tent, she dug in her pocket for 2 more chews, one each of the energy and focus. She liked mixing them in her mouth, and as she did, bemoaned not having something like this in her college days. Forget coffee. This stuff was a world apart. As her brain ramped up under the familiar influence of the herbal formulas, Coraline almost had to treat the flood of new ideas as a foreign body. It was highly overwhelming, yet also highly fruitful. Almost effortlessly, her enhanced thought patterns started making subconscious associations between those old college memories and her immediate situation. She remembered that she had dabbled with anti-narcoleptic drugs and other study aids to eke out a fraction of a higher grade. And what she had felt now, albeit much smoother, felt like a cousin of those pills. But these chews were only herbs, vitamins, sugar, and possibly a sprinkle of placebo, right? Concentrating on the chew's flavor, her heightened taste detected a slight bitterness in the end note of the candies. A single word was pushed to the forefront of her mind. Alkaloids. She scanned the tables, finding the charging stations and backup scry cubes. Shaking, she grabbed a cube and slid on a pair of glasses. Then, unceremoniously, she spat what remained in her mouth into the box and pressed the lid shut. The HUD display popped up as tags and analysis floated before her like a transparent cafe menu. Ironically, Coraline was listed as one of the substances. That meant Sasha had somehow gotten a hold of her DNA. The trash from their tents, maybe? Or before that even. The screening process, the physicals. Son of a bitch, Coraline hissed, wishing she could scream it instead. Looking at the other ingredients in Sasha's little treats, she recognized a handful right off the bat. Theobromine makes sense. A longer half-life than caffeine. Cinnamon for blood sugar, logical, keeps focus steady. B vitamins, centrophenozine? What the hell? As she looked at the list, Coraline noticed a new category flashing amongst the other augmented projections. She picked up a tablet, slid a finger, and tapped. Under the new heading of Authorization Accepted, a list dropped down. Restricted data, do not capture. Something must have happened. A systems failure, a breach. How did I not know about this? She was fuming. But Coraline forced herself to refocus on the makeup of the candy. Mescaline? Peyote! Drugs, she exclaimed, pulling out the empty wrappers and staring at their one-word summations. That crazy bitch is roofing us, she exclaimed too loudly, but then panicked, looking around from her adrenaline-inspired paranoia. Nobody's here, crazy. Get back to your espionage, but shut up about it already. Think, 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 she chanted, trying to stave off another outburst as she paced, kneading her sweaty hands. Think like Sasha. Where would she have... Coraline froze mid-step as another subliminal cue was express delivered by the drug's effects. From the corner of her eye, she caught a barely perceptible something. Turning slowly, she stared through the clear plastic of the dining hall windows and spotted a blinking red pulse. There was some sort of optical repeater in a clearing near the jungle's edge. Simultaneously outraged at Sasha, yet impressed by her own enhanced vision, Coraline tore past the exit, speed-walking into the underbrush. Reaching the signal source, Coraline was hesitant to enter. Her heartbeat was painful in her neck. She spun in a wild, frantic circle, searching for watchful eyes. To her relief, no one stared back. Quickly, before the paranoia intensified, she ducked inside the tent. Pushing her sweaty black hair out of her eyes, she tried to slow her breathing and take it all in. There were locked firearm cages, a digital safe bolted to a comically large concrete block, and more black totes, but with padlocks. Coraline ran over to the first tote, looking at the hinge, and rolled her eyes. "Hire better minions, Sasha. This is rookie-level shit at best," she said, happy to see Sasha taking down an intellectual notch or two. She glanced around, grabbed some pliers off a workbench, and whacked the end of the simple hinge. The stainless steel wire center jumped out a fraction, now exposed enough for her to clamp on. It came out quickly, like a metal noodle from a pasta machine. When released, the half-lid clacked, and she folded it over onto its twin. Mistake number 2. Never leave tools around anything you want to keep secure. The tote was chock full of those bite-sized, generic, well, Coraline didn't know how to categorize them now. Power-ups? Snake oil suckers? Lawsuit lozenges? These, however, had names that seemed much more esoteric and dangerous than Coraline's musings. In a breathy, panicked tone, Coraline read them to herself as she tried to wall off all the ideas and sensations fighting for attention in her head. Time dilation. Heartburst. Far-seeing. Soul mover. What the hell? This scared her. Not the guns, not the frantic, drug-enhanced, tantric twister sessions with Harold, but this secret, cryptic, and definitely illegal stash of mind-altering substances. What incredible new powers did they hold? And were the ingredients so rare or dangerous that Sasha could not or would not share these with the rest of the crew? Or, wait, what if she already has? Sasha and Emily, always off together, and today, the two of them coming back to camp looking like shit. Like they were crashing, coming down off of something. Son of a... Coraline jumped at what sounded like a snapped twig. Her senses were cranked up so high, she couldn't tell if the noise was perception or, let's call it imagination. She paused, holding her mental breath. Another crunch, this time greenier foliage from its sound. Once is chance, Coraline. Twice is coincidence, she hissed in her mother's stern tone. Now, more crunching, faster, and closing in on her position. Nope, real as fuck. Pattern it is, she belted out. Filling her pockets with handfuls of the pillow packs, she threw the lid back in position. It was amazing how quickly she pinged that hinge back in place. The last bit stuck out, but Coraline reasoned it would take a very attentive individual to catch it, and she seldom ran into those. A patrol guard popped his head inside, just as she barely escaped behind the tent and into the bottle green maze. He sniffed a few times and swore he got a whiff of nervous sweat. "Should have stayed in Virginia, this fucking place," he declared, spitting on the plastic floor. Stopping had made him acutely aware of his prodigious swamp-ass situation. Pissed off and sweaty, he sealed the tent with another angry yank. Cursing, he slung his rifle and clumped back to his assignment. Having to circle around and re-enter the compound, Coraline tried to slow down her walking and not look like a cartoon cat burglar on meth. Casual, Coraline. Act fucking casual. she thought, bemoaning her lack of control over her body and mind. As she cautiously slinked through the jungle, a sense of melancholy fell over her. How had she missed Sasha's deception for an entire month? Suddenly, she was infused with a mix of her worst insecurities, making her feel irrelevant, forgetful, and powerless. No, I am not having this weakness bullshit. I can't afford to backslide. Not when I have Sasha by her magic beans, Coraline stated defiantly to the jungle around her. Then, in opposition to Sasha, she reached into her pocket, took out one of those magic beans, and ate it, sight unseen. After what felt like forever, she arrived at Harold's tent. She burst through the velcroed flaps with zero warning, almost giving him a heart attack. Coraline stumbled inside, knocking over his little folding table and collapsing under her hands and knees. Cora! Jesus H, what the hell, man? That was my snacks, he bellowed, his eyes ping-ponging between the last of his s'mores, now covered in tent grunge, and the love of his life. Coraline looked frantic, like she had just fallen out of a horror movie shower scene, but was still being chased by the slasher. With the help of the focus chew Harold had eaten that morning, he processed the 5 stages of food grief so speedily that he hit acceptance in under 2 seconds. Okay, sorry I snapped at you, babe. What can I do? How can I help? You need medical? I can go wake up the... But Coraline had turned away and was mumbling something as she fumbled with the tent's oversized plastic zipper, pulling it down with shaky hands. Cora, I don't want to be a hypocrite here, but, I mean, shit, how many of those energy things did you eat today? Shh! Keep it down, she said, frustrated with his apparent lack of situational awareness. Yeah, sorry. But are you, okay? He said, a concerned hand on her shoulder, his other offering a water bottle. After chugging half of it, she looked around again nervously. Inside a tent, mind you. Look, I'm going to tell you some shit, and I want you to firstly not raise your voice. Coraline whisper-hissed at Harold with a, I think someone is listening, look on her face. Harold just shrugged, his default emoji. Emotional stability seemed to be his superpower. Well, that and that new thing he did to Coraline last night. Meow. Okay, look. Just look at all this crazy shit, she stammered, emptying her pockets onto the cot he had prepared for their afternoon frolic. I thought we weren't raising our voices, he whispered back, eyebrows stern. Staring at the pile of whatever it was, he ran his hand through the packets, picking one up. Where the hell did you find all this? Time compression? What does that even mean in a snack food? He said, tossing it back on the pile and rubbing his scalp, perplexed. Before she could explain, the unknown variable she had swallowed earlier began unfurling in her digestive tract. As the pH-sensitive microspheres burst, they delivered a chemical cocktail straight into her small intestine. Suddenly, a rush of white noise drowned out whatever Harold was saying. Coraline remembered with a jolt to her heart that she had eaten one of the hidden chews. She winced as a stabbing pain made her clutch the sides of her head, the room spinning. Then the pain was gone, along with a snippet of lost time. The shock of a hiccup in her perfect memory forced all the gears in Coraline's head to suddenly expand like compressed novelty towels in a bucket of water. If said water had been runoff from an EDM festival. She could feel her mental capacities ramping up, multiplying. But her head felt like layers and layers of nesting glass spheres, all spinning in different directions, a spectacular yet nauseating effect. Gimme the, she said, the back of her hand over her mouth, as Harold intuitively grabbed a barf bucket and a ginger ale. Half a crisp, carbonated can later, she let out a healthy burp and seemed to stabilize. Well, her stomach at least. But with her new, temporary abilities helping more than hurting, she jumped right back into the task at hand. This It's like a jigsaw puzzle, okay? We lay them out, try to find a pattern, something, Coraline said, primarily to herself. Harold made a valiant effort of fumbling with the heap of white packets, but he couldn't make heads or tails. I got it. Levels. A progression. Like how we use the energy, then the focus, right? She said, staring at the packets. Coraline had organized them into general piles in a few minutes and uncapped 2 Sharpies, tossing one to him. Let's assume one to, say, 8 or 9 tiers. Sorted by, these general categories, yeah? Coraline said excitedly. He nodded, approving thus far, but not knowing to what exactly. Okay, so it will be a cumulative or complementary experience. These classic beauties, the energy, and whatever else sounds invigorating, that's the first level. The focus cues, and any others that seem attention-based, make sense as the subsequent desired effect, right? Makes sense, sure, Harold echoed back, watching in amazement as she did her thing. Then, here, I'm not sure the number, but endurance? That seems to go with flow state and stamina, yeah? He flashed a wolfish, oh, you know it, grin, but she just rolled her eyes and plowed forward. Look, this is all about getting amped up, doing work. Uppers, stimulants. These are tools, man. They have to be the first level, Coraline said, smacking the pile. Come on, help already, she pleaded as her pen squeaked out a barely readable font. She continued as Harold dove in, scribbling a number on one of the stimulant packets. And then these here are all about perception of time, stretching it with dilation, speeding it up with compression. So those would go with this eternity chew, right? Coraline asked, waving the crinkly, noisy packet like a matador. Well, eternity, now we're getting way out there, you know? It could be about time, but it also could be about extending anything you want to last for an eternity. Maybe that one's laced with Molly because Sasha wants to get her rocks off forever. I'm just saying, without some sort of chemical analysis, how'd you know you're not forcing them into these categories artificially? Just by their cutesy names, you know? Harold said, raising his eyebrows at her. Yes, he gave a good argument, and head, but somehow, instinctively, Coraline knew she was right. Exasperated, she huffed, her body and mind literally aching from operating at his slow, plodding pace. But wait, he's not slow, Coraline. He's fast but methodical. Remember that you shoot from the hip, and in the analytical stratosphere right now. Just slow down already. Take a deep breath and... got it! Harold, imagine there's a lot of sex, like right after we figure this out, she said, leaning in and kissing his neck hungrily. Damn sex candies. Right, he said, snapping to attention as he reached for a can of his favorite guayacay. So, a cumulative trip, stacking complementary substances like wine pairing. Based on that premise, I would say that your sporty go-go spice and temporal tampering piles are spot on. And these over here, Harold said, smushing together another loose pile Coraline had constructed. These are all sort of emotional intelligence, empathy, compassion, sigh, remote viewing. Those concepts deal with feeling something internally, rather than outward. Brute force number crunching, right? He said, scanning her worried face for a carrot or a stick. When he got neither, he stumbled on in darkness. I'm not sure what level they would be. Wow. So this is what she built her empire on? Maybe her backers or the drug companies get some of this, a fraction. Like a 16-hour energy shot or what have you. But this other stuff, these are tools. Like you said, power tools. Those dusty-ass wizards in Sasha's cave would have used. I mean, mushrooms? LSD microdosing? Silicon Valley is gaga for that kind of stuff right now. But this is much, much deeper. As Harold stared at the remaining little plastic bundles, giving it his all, Coraline had her shirt half off, pulling it over her head. His eyes popped wide open as her breasts released from the confines of her sports bra, bouncing with youthful vigor. Well, what are you waiting for? We need to fuck this out. Come on, she exclaimed, flopping back onto the bedding as she launched her socks in different directions. He was now sporting a very different emoji, pulling his black t-shirt over his sweaty body. But we need to retrace her steps. We have 1 and 2 maybe. The rest, do you trust me? Coraline asked, her chest heaving from the herbs. Harold nodded a silent, "Of course, babe." And not just because he was almost half naked. Well, maybe that. We'll have to use the energy, harness the empathy, and leverage the time dilation to stretch it all out and just fumble through the rest. I know it's unscientific and possibly toxic if we screw up, but are you down? 1 through 9-ish? He paused to consider. Yeah, the energy and focus candies were fun, even necessary to function optimally in that hot, willpower draining environment. But some unknown, mind-shattering blend of maybe deadly mystery drugs? Hell yeah, he blurted out, peeling his pants off and unwrapping a supposed level 3 for each of them. He sank down next to her on the cot, and they spent the next 5 minutes chewing, kissing, groping, and waiting for something. Oh, what is that? Cora, you feel that too? It's like, Harold said, his perception bending and amplifying within their encapsulated altered universe. A minty, breezy massage, she replied, goosebumps cropping up as his hands squeezed and traced her curves. Coraline piled the remaining levels next to Harold, letting out a lustful moan. With her hands on Harold's chest, Coraline rubbed her slippery, warm pussy on his engorged prick, forcing him inside when she just couldn't tease herself any longer. Oh yeah, a breezy, holy crap, minty everywhere, he gasped, as the distinction between their bodies blurred with each sopping wet thrust. She tore open an empathy candy, sucked on it, then kissed him, pushing it into his eager mouth with a lustful tongue. A spinning cocoon of ecstatic oneness enveloped them, propagated by the herbs and drugs. As the couple continued their arduous journey towards a shared peak experience, Coraline finally lost her mind and found her spirit.